Have you ever stopped in the middle of an ordinary day, with the noise of the city still surrounding you, and suddenly asked yourself, who am I really? Not the name written on papers, not the job you are doing, not even the image you try so hard to create for others to see, but the person inside, the one behind all those layers. Have you ever felt something strange, as if the choices you make are not entirely your own, but come from a deeper source you have never dared to face? We often believe that we are in control of our lives. I chose this career, I fell in love with that person, I want this or that. But what if a large part of those choices did not truly come from you? What if there has been a hidden force, quiet yet persistent, shaping your path long before you became aware of it? It may sound like a conspiracy, but in truth, it is a psychological reality. A reality that Carl Jung, a man who dared to look into the abyss of the soul, revealed to us. Think about the times you promised yourself to change, to stop falling for the wrong people, to stop breaking yourself with foolish decisions, to stop repeating the same old circles. You know exactly what causes your pain, and yet you still return to it as if pulled by an invisible string. And each time you fail, you call it bad luck or destiny. But what if it is all the game of a hidden figure within you? A figure that has long lived in the shadows of your soul, pulling the strings like a puppet master. This shadow does not appear as it does in the movies. It does not knock on the door. It does not announce its name. Yet it is always there. It hides within your sudden bursts of anger, your jealousy, your forced smile that covers the sorrow. It is the part of you that you deny. And it is also the very thing you need to see if you truly want to be free. Carl Jung once said that the greatest enemy of your life is not out there. It is not the people you dislike, nor the circumstances that trap you. The enemy is within you. Yet the paradox is, if you are brave enough to look straight at it, you will discover that it is also the most powerful ally you could ever have. Why does this matter so much? Because we have grown used to living like the blind, walking through a minefield with our eyes closed. You cannot see the psychological landmines under your feet, but every misstep wounds you. You lose faith in love, then fall again into the same toxic relationships. You tell yourself you will do better, but end up back where you started. And that pain keeps repeating until you believe it is fate. But if that fate is only the darkness within you, it means you can change it. Not by running away, but by turning back and facing the very place you fear the most. That is what Jung called the abyss of the soul. To understand the human mind, Freud dug into the subconscious and found repressed desires. But Jung did not stop there. He went further, into depths Freud dared not touch. There, he saw ancient symbols, living myths, memories, not belonging to one person but to all of humanity. He realized that the mind is not just a private storage of personal experiences, but also connected to an invisible ocean where timeless stories continue to breathe. Jung had the courage to do something few would dare. He did not want to simply heal the symptoms, patch people up, and send them back to survive in a sick society. He wanted to uncover the hidden corners, the rejected parts, the forgotten fragments of the soul, because he believed that pain is not a mistake, but a calling to transform, to return to the deepest part of yourself. There is a truth that few are willing to accept. It is not suffering that destroys you, but unconsciousness. Because when you do not know what is happening inside, you repeat the same patterns again and again. You call it destiny, but in reality, it is only the shadow steering the ship of your life while you sleep on the deck. Imagine someone who spends their whole life running away from loneliness. They throw themselves into work, fill their days with noise, chase fleeting love affairs to cover the emptiness. They do not realize that this very loneliness is the doorway back to their true self. They avoid it, and so it haunts them endlessly. Do you see yourself in that image? Have you ever tried everything to fill a hole inside, only to find that the more you fill it, the wider it becomes? Have you ever lived as if wearing a smiling mask, while inside you are breaking apart? If you have, then you have touched the edge of the shadow. But that is only the doorway. Beneath that mask lies something even more mysterious. A vast ocean where not only you, but all of humanity share the same memories, symbols, fears, and desires. Jung called it the collective unconscious. And if you are patient enough to look deeper, you will see that you do not carry only your own story, but you are also living out stories that were written thousands of years before you. You may believe your thoughts and feelings are unique, But what if I told you that even in your deepest dreams, there are scripts that millions of others have also seen, and that within every heartbeat, the voice of all humanity is still echoing? You sit quietly, listening to your own breath. In that silence, an image slowly appears. The mind is like a small island, floating in the middle of the sea. On the island, you see everything familiar: childhood memories, the wounds you once carried, the stories you tell yourself about who you are. This is the part you can easily call me. But right beneath that island, surrounding and engulfing it, lies a vast, dark ocean you have never dared to face. An ocean that does not belong only to you, but to all of humanity. That ocean is the collective unconscious. It is not an abstract idea. It is a living reality, breathing with you every day. Think about the dreams of people across different civilizations. Heroes setting out on dangerous journeys. Monsters they must confront. Rebirth after falling into the abyss. Whether you lived in ancient Greece, in India, or in distant America, the same stories repeat, as if an invisible hand has been writing the same script for every culture. This is not coincidence. It is the echo of the shared ocean. These figures, the hero, the traitor, the nurturing mother, the dragon guarding the treasure, are memories passed down through thousands of years. They live in your blood and bones without the need for you to learn them. When you fear abandonment, you are touching the oldest fear of humankind. The fear of losing the tribe, losing protection, being left alone in the wilderness. When you long for love, you are answering the primal call that guided humanity to find each other since the dawn of time. And when you yearn to rise, to break through limits, you are walking the same path that millions before you have walked. If the personal mind is a small room holding your own belongings, then the collective unconscious is a vast castle, with thousands of rooms you have never opened. In those rooms lie treasures, wisdom, creativity, courage. But there is also darkness, obsessions, destruction, primal instincts. You cannot escape this castle, because it is the foundation of your soul. Perhaps you have wondered why blockbuster movies about superheroes fascinate millions. Why a child in America feels moved by a European fairy tale, or an adult in Japan feels connected to an African legend. It is because these stories do not belong to one nation. They belong to all of humanity. They are the voices of the deep ocean, where archetypes, the primordial patterns, speak. And if you think you live apart, let me tell you this. Even when you are alone in a dark room, you are not entirely alone. Inside your mind lives a hidden crowd, hundreds of ancient figures whispering. A part of you is the fragile child seeking protection. Another part is the warrior, always wanting to prove himself. And somewhere within, there is also the traitor, the destroyer, the bringer of chaos. All of them live inside you. It is frightening to realize you are not only one person. You contain an entire universe, full of contradictions and conflicts. But this, too, is a gift, because within that diversity lies the key to understanding why you act the way you do, why you keep repeating the same cycles. And when you dare to open those doors, you will see that your fears are not yours alone, but a legacy you share with billions of others. Imagine a young man sitting in his small apartment, looking out at the city. He has just lost a relationship, and the pain is suffocating him. He believes it is his own private tragedy. But in truth, within him echoes a story told for thousands of years, the journey of a wanderer who loses love and is forced to face himself. His pain is not solitary. It is part of the heartbeat of humanity. And if he can understand this, he will see that he is not only carrying his own burden, but walking a path humanity has always walked. And the same is true for you. When you sink into anxiety, into the fear of failure, into the haunting fear of being abandoned, remember this. You are not only fighting your own ghosts, you are fighting the ghosts of all humankind. And within this vast ocean, there is a special presence, a figure that everyone carries, yet most try to ignore. It is the hidden part, the rejected part, the part you are too ashamed to admit. You may try to bury it as deep as possible, but it will always find a way back. This is the shadow. It is not exactly an enemy, but it is never gentle. It is the anger you try to suppress, but that explodes at the worst moment. It is the jealousy you deny, but that still eats away inside. It is the shame you hide, but that whispers every time you look in the mirror. The shadow is the part of you you refuse to call me, yet in truth, it is half of who you are. Do you dare to look at it? Or will you keep wearing a mask, pretending it does not exist. Because one day, when you can no longer control it, the shadow will step into the light, look straight at you, and ask, "Is it time to face me?" And, if you are brave enough, you will see that beneath the polite mask lies a truth you have buried for so long. Perhaps you have felt this before. One day, in what seemed like an ordinary moment, you suddenly exploded. A burst of anger, a harsh word that hurt someone you love, an action that made you stop right after and ask yourself, "What did I just do? Why did I act that way?" And you felt confused, unable to find an answer. But the answer was always there. Its name is the shadow, the part of your soul you try to hide, repress, and deny. Yet it has never disappeared. On the contrary, it watches silently, waiting for the moment when you are weakest to step forward. The shadow is the collection of everything you do not want to admit: selfishness, envy, greed, anger, weakness, arrogance. It is what you learned to hide in order to be loved, in order to be accepted. Think back to your childhood. When you cried too much, someone told you not to be so weak. When you got angry, they said a good child does not behave like that. When you voiced your desires, they told you to be quiet, so you learned to bury those parts of yourself. You grew up wearing the smile of obedience, the face of politeness, the mask of goodness. But underneath, everything you buried still lives, still breathes. The child who once felt unloved, bullied, or abandoned never disappeared. It only hid in the shadows. And the frightening truth is this: the more you deny it, the stronger it grows. It seeps into the voice in your head, whispering that you are not good enough, that you will fail, that you are unworthy of love. It pulls you back into toxic relationships, repeating the same mistakes. It is the reason you sabotage yourself, even when you stand right before your greatest opportunities. Ask yourself, how many times have you failed not because of others, but because you ruined it yourself? How many times have you lost someone you loved, not because they abandoned you, but because you pushed them away with jealousy, suspicion, or coldness you could not control? How many times have you stood at the doorway of success, only to hear a voice inside whisper, "You do not deserve this," and you let go? That is the shadow in control. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This means that as long as you pretend the shadow does not exist, you will remain under its rule. You will live in cycles, repeating the same tragedies again and again. But here is the astonishing truth. The shadow is not only destruction, it also carries a treasure. In the darkness lies a raw, primal energy, untamed but powerful. If you learn to face it and accept it, you can transform that energy into courage, creativity, and authenticity. The shadow does not disappear when you ignore it. It transforms only when you have the courage to invite it into the light. Maybe as you listen, your heart feels heavy because you see yourself in this story. Maybe you remember the times you felt jealous of a friend, but covered it with a polite smile. Maybe you think of a broken relationship that, deep down, you know was lost because of your own impulses. And if you feel the shadow speaking to you right now, pause, take a deep breath, and if you want, share. Because when you write it down, even just a simple comment, you begin to turn darkness into light. You are no longer the one running away. You are the one facing it. If you feel this story resonates with you, a like or a subscription is not only support, it is your way of saying, "I am here. I am willing to face this truth." And perhaps your sharing will become a mirror for someone out there, reminding them they are not alone. The shadow is the first doorway. But once you walk through, you will discover a greater journey, the journey of rebirth. Because to no longer be ruled by the shadow, you cannot just acknowledge it and walk away. You must learn to integrate it, to make it part of your wholeness. This is the path Jung called individuation, the journey of becoming a complete human being. Imagine a woman who has spent her entire life in the role of the good mother. She sacrifices everything for her family, always smiling, always enduring. But deep inside, she resents, she grows angry, she longs for something of her own. She hides it all in the shadows. And then one day, that resentment bursts out, and she explodes in rage. But if she could admit, "I am selfish too. I need love too. I am not only a mother. I am a human being with desires and dreams," Then she would begin her journey of individuation. Or imagine a young man raised under pressure to be strong, to succeed. He buries his fears, his weaknesses, his tears, but in the shadows, they gather. And every time he collapses, he blames himself for being a coward. Only when he accepts, I am weak too. I need comfort too. Can his shadow turn into strength, helping him connect with his true heart? That is the turning point. When the shadow is no longer the enemy, but the teacher. When you dare to face it, you will see that within the darkness lies the energy to grow, to live authentically, to stop being just the masks society has forced upon you. But be careful. This journey is not easy. It demands that a part of you must die, so that a new self can be born. And that death, the death of illusions, of the mask, of the false identity, is more painful than you imagine. But if you are brave enough, the next doorway will open. And beyond it lies the path to true freedom. There comes a strange moment in life when everything you once believed in, everything you clung to, suddenly feels fragile. It is like a mirror shattering. The fragments still reflect parts of you, but none are whole anymore. That is the moment you begin to step onto the path Jung called individuation, the journey of becoming yourself. It sounds simple, but let us be honest. How many years have you been living for someone else? For your parents? For the opinions of friends? For the expectations of society? How many times have you hidden your truth just to please others? How many times have you stayed silent when deep down you wanted to scream? You learned to wear armor, to put on the smiling mask, to work hard, to succeed, to be admired. And yet, when you are alone in the dark room, you hear the emptiness, a hollow echo rising from the abyss, asking you, is this really who I am? Individuation is not the game of the ego. It is not about becoming a so-called better version of yourself to display on social media. It is the painful journey of stripping away everything that is not truly you. It feels like death, the death of illusions, the death of pretense, the death of the false identity that once kept you safe. From those ashes, a new self is born, more real, more whole. Imagine carrying a heavy suitcase for years, never daring to open it. Inside lies your weakness, your anger, your shame, all the things you buried. You keep dragging it, the weight pressing down more and more. Individuation is the moment you stop. Open the suitcase, look at every item inside and say, this too is part of me. You no longer reject or deny. Instead, you learn to rearrange and integrate them into a whole. The most painful realization is this. You are not only light. You are also shadow. You are not only strength. You are also vulnerability. You are not only love. You are also selfishness. And only when you embrace all of it do you become complete. There was a man in his 40s who lived his whole life according to society's standards. He had a stable job, a proper family, and the respect of his friends. But one day, when his children had grown and everything seemed perfect on the outside, he fell into crisis. His work no longer gave him meaning. His family no longer gave him joy. He no longer knew who he was. He began to lose sleep, dreaming strange dreams of a ruined house, of a locked door. Only then did he realize that all along he had been living as the masked society expected, never as himself. Individuation was calling his name. Or think of a young woman, 19 years old, who always tried to be the good daughter. She studied the subject her parents chose, dated someone they approved of, lived exactly as they wanted. But inside, she felt suffocated, like a flower forced to bloom in a mold. One day, she broke down in tears after a dream. In the dream, she stood at a crossroads, not knowing where to go. That was her soul whispering, it is time to walk your own path. Individuation always begins in crisis. It often comes through loss, the loss of a loved one, the loss of love, the loss of work, or simply the loss of knowing who you are. And in those moments, the soul knocks on your door. It says, it is time to return. This process does not happen overnight. It unfolds through stages, through collisions, through breaking points. Every time you lose a piece of your ego, an old belief, a wrong relationship, a false mask, you move closer to your true self. Every pain is a rebirth. But do not be mistaken. This does not make life easier. On the contrary, it forces you to face what you fear most. You must learn to let go of control, to accept uncertainty, to walk through the darkness without knowing when the light will appear. Carl Jung once wrote, "The encounter with the self is by nature a defeat for the ego. The meeting with your true self always feels like the death of the ego, because the ego will resist, fight, and struggle not to die. But only when it dies can the new self be reborn. And here lies the miracle. When you dare to go through that death, you find freedom. Not outer freedom, the freedom to choose a job, a lover, or a place to live, but inner freedom, the freedom to be yourself, without pretending, without carrying a mask. You stop living to be accepted. You begin living to be whole. But how do you know you are on the right path? How do you hear the voice of your soul when the outside world is so loud? The answer lies in the symbols your unconscious sends you. The soul does not speak in rational words. It speaks in dreams, in images, in stories full of symbols. And every night, when you close your eyes, that doorway opens again. Dreams, which many dismiss as random fragments, are actually the map of individuation. In dreams, the unconscious brings you the missing pieces, the reminders you have forgotten. It does not speak with logic. It speaks with images. A snake, a door, a house, a child. Each carries a message. If you know how to listen, you will find the compass to return home. So instead of brushing dreams aside as meaningless, try writing them down. Sit quietly and ask, what is my soul trying to tell me? Because sometimes, in the strangeness of a single dream, you may find the key to the transformation you have been seeking your entire life. And then you will realize, dreams are not the mind's nonsense. They are an ancient language, the secret voice of the soul. If you are sensitive enough to listen, you will see that every dream is a doorway. The only question is, do you dare step through and discover what waits on the other side? Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, your heart pounding, after a dream so strange you could never forget it? Perhaps it was a dream of running from a giant shadow or falling into a bottomless pit. Maybe it was a dream of a mysterious house with rooms you had never entered, or of someone long gone who appeared again, looking at you with eyes full of meaning. And when you woke up, you asked yourself, what does this mean? Or is my mind just playing tricks on me? The modern world is quick to dismiss dreams as mental garbage, random fragments of chaos not worth your attention. But for Jung, dreams were the voice of the soul, a secret map guiding the journey of becoming yourself. He believed that dreams are never meaningless. They are letters sent from the unconscious to the conscious mind, written not in words but in symbols. When you dream of falling, it is not just a random fear. It often comes when in waking life, you are losing control, when the foundation you rely on is shaking. When you dream of your teeth falling out, it is not simply strange imagery, but a sign of helplessness, a fear of losing power. When you wander through a house with many locked doors, it may be a reminder that parts of your soul remain unexplored, memories and truths you refuse to open. The miracle of dreams lies in this. They speak for the soul when you refuse to listen during the day. By day, you bury yourself in work, hide your true feelings, smile to cover your sorrow. But at night, the unconscious sends you a short film, forcing you to face what you avoided. It is like a patient friend, waiting until you fall asleep to whisper, do not forget, this is your truth. And it is not only your own dreams that matter. The fairy tales you heard as a child, the films that move you to tears, the symbols of religion and myth, all are collective dreams of humanity. They mirror the archetypes, the primordial patterns living within you. That is why when you cry over a film or shiver at an ancient story, it is not only personal emotion, it is the collective unconscious reaching out to you, reminding you that you are part of the shared ocean. Imagine a woman who often dreams of being lost in a dense forest with no way out. Each time she wakes, her heart still beats wildly. As she reflects, she realizes her waking life is the same, trapped in a suffocating relationship where she cannot find her own path. Her dream was not random. It was a mirror. And by facing it, she begins to leave that relationship and open a new chapter of her life. Or a man who dreams again and again of being chased by a wild beast. At first, he panics, running, sweating, terrified when he wakes. But one night, he stops running and turns to face it. And he discovers the beast does not want to kill him. It only wants him to acknowledge the anger, the desire he has buried. In that moment, the beast transforms into strength, into an ally. That is the truth of dreams. When you face the darkness, it no longer hunts you. It becomes a source of energy for growth. Dreams never lead you astray. They are always trying to pull you back to your center, to the place you have forgotten. When consciousness strays too far, the unconscious sends images to restore balance. Like a hand adjusting the rudder when the ship drifts off course. You can ignore it, but the price is confusion, anxiety, depression. Today the world teaches you to trust reason, logic, data. But the soul does not speak that language. The soul speaks in images, in symbols. When you dream of a house, it may be a symbol of your inner self. If the house is dark and dusty, it may be a reminder you have neglected a part of you. If you dream of a mirror, it may be a call to face your shadow. If you see a snake, it may signal transformation, the shedding of an old skin. Learning the language of dreams is like learning an ancient tongue, the language of the soul. And when you learn to listen, life no longer feels as chaotic. You carry a map. You know that even in the dark, a guiding hand is with you. But dreams are only the beginning. Beneath them lie forces even stronger. Invisible characters still shaping your life. Archetypes, the primordial patterns, are ancient scripts you are unconsciously living out every day. You may think you are choosing freely, but sometimes it is the archetypes steering you. One day you sacrifice everything for others, forgetting yourself. That is the hero archetype. Another day you tremble, terrified of abandonment, desperate for love. That is the wounded child. And if you keep sabotaging your own happiness, drawn into chaos, that may be the shadow archetype you have not yet integrated. Archetypes are not abstract theories. They are actors performing on the stage of your life. The real question is, do you know who is acting within you? Or are you sitting in the audience, thinking you are only watching, when in fact, you are the main character being driven by the script? Once you recognize these archetypes, you begin to see clearly. Your life is not just random. It is an ancient play being repeated again and again. And then the question arises, will you continue as the character being controlled? Or will you become the author, rewriting the script of your own life? Have you ever looked back at yourself and asked, why did I act that way? Why do I keep repeating the same story, even though I swore I would change? There are moments when it feels as if an invisible hand is arranging things, pulling you into the same kind of relationships, the same old cycles, the same recurring pain. You believe it is your choice, but deep down, perhaps you are only reliving an ancient script, the script of the archetypes. Archetypes are not distant figures from books. They live inside you. They are primordial patterns, roles carried by the collective unconscious for thousands of years, and each of us carries many of them within. The problem is, sometimes they take control, and you have no idea. Look around you. The woman who sacrifices for everyone, forgetting herself, always trying to save, always carrying the burden. Within her lives, the hero archetype. At first, it gives her strength, resilience, admiration. But when she is overwhelmed, the hero becomes a chain, exhausting her, making her live for others while losing herself. Or the man who always has to appear wise, always needing to be the most knowledgeable in the room. Behind him lives the wise archetype. It pushes him to seek truth and knowledge. But when unconscious, it also makes him arrogant, detached, and disconnected from his heart. Some people carry the wounded child archetype. They long for unconditional love, but fear abandonment. They enter relationships with trembling hearts, repeating the old wound. The more they love, the more afraid they become, the more they suffer. The child within drives them, seeking love, not to love, but to heal what was broken long ago. And then there is the shadow archetype. It does not disappear when ignored. It hides, showing up as sudden anger, uncontrollable jealousy, or mistakes you do not understand why you keep making. It is the hidden scriptwriter, dragging you into dramatic turning points, forcing you to confront the truth you deny. These archetypes are not exactly enemies. They are streams of primal energy. They can lift you up or drag you down. When you are unconscious, they own you. When you are conscious, they become allies. Think back to the last time you felt like you were acting as someone else. Maybe you were normally calm, but suddenly you exploded like fire, surprising even yourself. Or maybe you found yourself pulled towards someone, toward a relationship, as if by an invisible string. That is when an archetype stepped onto the stage and took the role. Life, in this sense, is like a vast theater. You are not just one actor, you are an entire cast inside. Sometimes the hero steps out, sometimes the wounded child, sometimes the shadow. The problem is, most of the time you do not notice who is holding the script. You think you are free, but you are only being guided by an ancient role. A young woman once shared that she kept falling for men who could never stay, men who always left. She suffered, blaming herself, believing she was unworthy. But when she looked deeper, she found the wounded child within, the child who had once been abandoned by her father. That archetype pulled her into repeating the wound, as if her unconscious hoped for a different ending. Only when she recognized it did she begin to write a new script for herself. Another man spent his life chasing success and achievements, pushing himself until his health was gone. He thought it was his own ambition. But in the dark, the hero archetype whispered, "Prove yourself, win." And when he realized this, he finally let go. He learned to live not to be a hero in the eyes of others, but to be whole for himself. Unconscious archetypes can turn your life into a game of destiny. But when you learn to recognize them, you begin to take back authorship. You are no longer just a character in the play, but the one holding the pen. You can rewrite the role, change the pace, choose a new ending. The modern world, with its noise and distractions, makes it harder than ever to hear the voice within. You get pulled into social media, comparisons, pressure to succeed, to shine. And in this storm, archetypes easily take the stage and run your life without you noticing. Society teaches you to wear the persona, the mask to be admired, to be accepted. But when you live too long behind the persona, you lose your soul. The price is emptiness, disconnection, crisis of meaning. Carl Jung once said that modern man believes he is free, but in truth he is bound by invisible forces within. You think you chose that job, that relationship, that decision, but often it was the archetypes choosing for you. They do not ask. They just step out and perform. The only way to free yourself from their blind control is awareness. When you dare to sit still, to listen, to observe, to call them by name, they lose their unconscious power. From controllers, they become allies. From burdens, they become strength. And that is when you truly begin to rewrite the script of your life. You do not need to banish the hero, the wounded child, or the shadow. You need to invite them to the round table, listen to them, and then decide who holds the pen. That is when you stop being dragged along and start living with intention. But soon you will face a bitter truth. Society today does not help you turn inward. It pushes you outward, chasing success, status, image. And in that storm, the soul is forgotten. When the soul cries out, it does not ask for more money or fame. It whispers only one question: who am I, really? And that is the greatest crisis of modern humanity. Have you ever felt that in the modern world, surrounded by light, noise, and comfort, there still hides an emptiness you cannot name? You have everything at your fingertips: a smartphone, instant information, endless connection. But when the screen goes dark, in the silence, there is a quiet shadow, a sigh in your chest, a sense of loneliness even in a crowd. We are told that freedom lies in having choices, that happiness comes when you have more, faster, brighter. But reality speaks otherwise. The more choices you have, the more confused you become. The more connections you have, the lonelier you feel. Jung saw this long ago. He knew that modern man would lose his soul in a society obsessed only with appearances, performance, image, roles. He warned that when the persona, the social mask, becomes your entire life, you will soon feel like an empty shell. And today, millions are living in that very confusion. Successful but hollow, admired but unhappy, surrounded by friends but still alone. You can see it in the eyes of a young woman, posting radiant photos every day on social media. Each photo receives hundreds of likes, yet every night she cries, feeling that no one truly knows her. You can see it in the man with a career others envy, who comes home and quietly stares at the mirror, seeing a stranger. You can see it in young people in their 20s, who seem to have the whole world, yet fall into depression and despair because they cannot find a meaning big enough to live for. Society teaches us an endless game of comparison. Who is prettier? Who is richer? Who is more successful? But the soul does not play that game. The soul does not care how many likes you get, how much money you earn, how many medals you win. The soul cares only about one thing. Are you living true to it? And when the soul has been forgotten too long, it begins to scream. It screams through anxiety, through depression, through existential crisis, symptoms that modern medicine quickly labels, medicates, but rarely asks, what part of the soul is crying out? Jung never promised an easy path. He did not give a 5-step formula for happiness, nor did he claim you could heal in 21 days. He knew the truth was harder. The journey back to the soul requires courage, honesty, and patience. But because of that, it offers something no one else can give you: true freedom. Freedom is not the absence of darkness. Freedom is the courage to enter the darkness, to face the shadow, to acknowledge the archetypes that drive you, and to integrate them into wholeness. Then you no longer live in fragments. You become whole. And a whole human being, no matter how chaotic the world outside, always has a solid center to return to. Imagine a middle-aged man who spent years chasing success until he collapsed into crisis. He lost everything he once thought was important. But in that painful moment, for the first time, he began to write in a journal, recording his dreams, facing his fears. Slowly, he found peace, not in the spotlight, but in quiet mornings, when he knew he was living in truth. Or a young woman once consumed by social media, chasing validation through likes. One day, she stopped posting. She stopped living for the eyes of others. She began to listen to her dreams, to dialogue with her shadow, to sketch the symbols that appeared in her mind. She discovered she was both weak and strong, both light and dark, both loving and selfish. And for the first time, she did not reject any part of herself. She felt free. You begin to realize this journey has no end, because the soul never stops calling. Once you begin listening, it will lead you deeper, further, not to make you perfect, but to make you real. And that truth, sometimes painful, sometimes raw, is always liberating. If you are still here, listening to these words, perhaps your soul is also sending you a signal. Perhaps you are tired of running, tired of living for appearances, tired of carrying yourself just to please everyone. Perhaps you know it is time to stop. To stop and be honest with yourself. I am not broken. I am only fragmented. I only need to gather the pieces I have forgotten. There is no coincidence. The fact that you are here, listening to this story, may itself be the unconscious calling you home. Like a mirror, it shows you both your shadow and your light, and asks, are you ready to walk? You do not need to understand every symbol, decode every dream, or name every archetype right now. All you need is the first step: honesty. Sit down and say to yourself, enough. Enough pretending. Enough running. Enough living as a shallow version of myself. It is time to return. And once you have seen, you cannot go back. Once the light shines into the darkness, that darkness is never the same. You cannot pretend you do not know anymore. You can only move forward. Perhaps you are trembling. Perhaps you are not ready. But remember, every great journey begins with one small step. And the very fact that you are here, allowing this story to touch you, is already that first step. Because freedom does not come from having everything. It comes from daring to face everything you are. And once you begin this path, you will discover the truth was never outside. It has always been here, in the deepest depths of your soul, waiting for you to come home. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.